Hey everyone, it's Jim again from Paranormal Fellowship. You know, the guy that does trying to do these videos where everyone else talks about stories, whether they're true or not, that other people have wrote in and they just read them online. Me, I tell you about my personal experiences from more years than I care to admit because I don't want to say how old I actually am. But let's just say probably since before most of you were born. I started doing this in the 80s. Now, this one's going to be a little bit different than what I normally post on here. So, I was watching a podcast the other day from a friend of mine, and it brought up an old memory. So, the guest that they had was talking about ghost hunting and some of the places they've gone, and it seemed like a really nice guy. Seemed like he knew what he was talking about. But then he also brought up the point about how there's some of these places that are just in it to make money. And it brought into my memory, years and years ago, I went down to Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky. Now, there was a group of us that went down there, and, at that time, we were into all the gears and gadgets and things like that, back in, I think this was the early 90s, so that was still at the beginning of it before everyone got into having all the latest and greatest gears and gadgets. And I had a FLIR thermal imager, which I bought used for $3,500. So there wasn't a lot of those around yet. And we had a lot of other good gadgets. So we go down there, and like I said, this was an expensive trip for us to, get a van, drive down there, spend the weekend down there, spend all the money for the ghost hunt down there. I mean, it was a pretty big undertaking. And then as soon as we get there, we're all excited about, if anyone's ever researched Waverly Hills, they talk about the death tunnel. The tunnel where at the time they were sitting saying that there were 60,000 people that died of tuberculosis in this clinic, and they just were dying so fast they didn't want people to see them coming out the front doors. So they just scooted them down this tunnel to the waiting railroad cars down below, and they just held them off. So we were all excited to see that. Well, if you research Waverly Hills now, the number has dropped from 60,000 people to 6,000 people died, which is still a tremendous, tremendous amount of death and suffering and agony, which I couldn't even imagine. But there's no reason to lie about that amount. You just say, if you knew the number, say the number. Don't exaggerate it. So anyways, we get there, and before they'll take you out there, you got to sit in there for a mandatory meeting that they tell you the rules of ghost hunting at Waverly Hills Sanatorium. So this one guy gets up there, and he starts telling everyone, says, listen, I don't know how it works, but if you want to catch pictures of shadow people, what you need to do is turn the flash off on your cameras. Again, not everyone had iPhones with cameras. This was back before that day. So everyone still had, whether it was film cameras or digital cameras, but still had a camera. And he's telling everyone, this is what you do. You turn your flash off on the camera, and then you take your pictures. And then when you go home, download all those pictures onto your computer. And then once you get them onto your computer, you adjust the color, the tint, the contrast, the hue, and this and that and everything else. And as you're doing all that, you're playing with those settings, all these shadow people will come visible in your pictures on the computer. Again, I'm not an expert, but I did sell, computers. I did sell digital cameras. I sold film cameras. So I knew enough about them to know how they worked and, the basics on them. And I'm like, something just doesn't seem right. So they break you up, and you got to go to a certain floor, and you're with a tour guide. They won't leave you alone because they don't want you to steal any souvenirs and take them home with you. So I'm like, okay, that's not a big deal. I can understand that. So they take us to the first floor, and I actually have not just a Sony Night Shot camcorder, which at the time, again, there wasn't a lot of them, but I actually had a Sony Night Shot still digital camera. So I could take still pictures with no flash in Night Shot to get the images I was looking for. So they took us up, I think was a third floor. So, they sit there and say, okay, for the first 5 minutes, everyone's got to stay right here at the landing. Nobody go anywhere. We want to wait for everyone to get settled in. We don't want someone to mistake you moving for a ghost. I'm like, oh, that's actually a pretty good idea. So I pulled out my digital camera, my Sony night shot, and turned on the night shot mode and started looking through the viewfinder and said, wow, I mean, this hallway is probably a good 100 feet long, and it's super bright with my night shot. I mean, this is really wild. So I'm looking around, I'm snapping pictures, I'm all impressed, thinking my camera's working better than it's ever worked before. And I turned, instead of facing down the hallway, I'd walk forward a little bit, because it's 5 minutes awaited, and turned around, and now was taking pictures back towards the landing. And when I was doing that, I was getting this glare like I was filming into lights. But again, all the lights were out. So I'm like, what the heck? So I'm panning around, searching around with my digital camera, trying to find the source of this light, because I can't see any of my eyes, but the camera's picking it up. And then I noticed on the wall behind where we were all standing and told to take pictures, with no flash, and then adjust the computer settings, it looks like, there are banks of infrared extender lights in the panels on the wall. So they're broadcasting and shooting all this infrared light down the hall, and then anyone who's walking in front of those infrared lights and someone's taking a picture behind them with no flash on, when they download it to their computer and adjust it, then you're going to get all of these shadows. You're not going to be able to see this person in front of you because you turned the flash off. But you're all going to be able to see their shadow when you mess with the shadows around. So I'm like, that's kind of cheesy. Now, another nice thing that they had was when the tuberculosis clinic was open, they had these open air patios for the residents to go out there and get some fresh air, because the fresh air was thought to help make them feel better. That sounds like a good idea to me. So we're heading out there, and the volunteer that's working with us in our group says, now when you're out here, you can't take any pictures or movies out into the parking lot. Now, I'm like, well, there's no buildings out there. Why can't I take pictures out into the parking lot? I mean, it's not like you could get a picture of someone's car license plate number or anything. You're far enough away. And one of the stories was that there was always stones that would be thrown in from and hit in that patio area, that outside patio area. So I'm like, So when he was too busy talking to some of the other people I was with, I walked out there and hid around a corner where he couldn't see me. And I was looking out there trying to figure out, why can't I take pictures out here? And then I could hear this noise, and it's like I'm straining to listen, and it's people talking and laughing. Well, here, all the parking volunteers and everybody, they're all sitting out there in the woods just on the other side of the parking lot. So, in the parking lot's gravel, they're all out there hanging out, having a good time. And there's stones that fly from the parking lot into the patio, and we're not allowed to take pictures of the parking lot with people because we might see them throwing one of the stones in, is my guess. So now I'm starting to really get disheartened. I mean, I'm like, okay, they've got hidden infrared lights causing shadows. They got people out there in the parking lot probably throwing stones up to, pay for that. So I'm talking to one of the other people that's in a group, and we're both like really disgusted and fed up. And we go, okay. We go up to the one volunteer that's directing us and saying, we're not having any luck. There's nothing paranormal going on. We're getting kind of disheartened. So the guy says, oh, what you need to do is there's this atrium down at the end of the hallway here. There's been all kinds of activity going on down at this atrium. All the other groups have been reporting all this stuff going on and hearing these weird noises, and they're feeling these breezes. And it's like, all right, we'll head down there for a while. So again, we've got everything. We've got thermal imaging, night vision, good audio equipment. We're out there. And we get down there and we said, okay, well, we're going to sit one person over at this corner. I'm going to sit over at this corner, and we'll see what's going on. And damn, if he wasn't right, I could feel like this wisp going by me, and it's like, it didn't feel quite right. It was just like, something's not right. And I go over to the other guy and I say, you feeling this too? And he's like, yeah. So now, we don't turn on a flashlight. We start scanning around on the night vision and thermal imaging, and we're seeing like these little orbs flying across the thermal imaging and across the night vision. So we start following them. And we get over there, and there is a 3-foot hornet's nest in the room this guy sent us to. And there's all these hornets, bees, whatever the hell they were, wasps, flying in and out of this nest, and right where he told us to go sit and, for paranormal activity. I'm like, yeah, okay, I'm getting just totally disgusted. So, our time on that floor was done, so we went to the next floor, nothing going on. So finally we get up to the top floor, and up there they got this room where a nurse hung herself because she got pregnant and the doctor wanted her to abort it and didn't want nothing to do with her, and she got depressed and she hung herself. And everyone's like, oh, this room is all kinds of crazy active. And you're sitting around, we're on the roof, and like I said, this little building with the rooms is on top of the roof. And we walked around out there and we watched the drag races going on down on the main road there. The kids are drag racing their cars, and okay, it was like, all right, nothing ghostly, but it's cool up here. So we tell the tour guide, say, hey, ain't nothing ghostly going on here. Do you have any tips for us? He says, yeah, go in this room where the nurse hung herself. That people are hearing all kinds of scratching on the walls, and they're hearing growling. It's like a demonic possession, demonic haunting, and demonic possession in that room. We're like, well, we ain't seen nothing else today. We might as well give it a shot. So we're like, okay. So we head down there. You hear the tapping going on? I don't know what that is, but anyways. So we go up into that room, and we get in there, and all of a sudden we're hearing the scratching on the walls, and we're hearing this growling. And I'm just like, either this is the demon himself, or what's going on. So again, we've got the latest gear. So I break out the thermal imaging, and I'm getting a little bit of a heat signature glowing behind the wall. So my partner, he goes through and he scans up with this night vision camcorder. He says, look up there. Well, up at the top of the wall, it was sort of like busted out. There's like a hole that went into the subframe. And sitting there, all of a sudden, we see these eyes looking back at us. No, it wasn't a demon. It was a mama raccoon and 3 cubs sitting there in this hole in the wall, scratching on the wall and growling at people who came in there to scare them away because, it's a mama raccoon and her babies. So I am just beyond pissed. I said, that's it. I'm packing up the gear. We're getting out of here. And I'm getting ready to leave. And they talked me into it. It's like, okay, it's our turn to go to the death tunnel. And it's like, all right, great. So we get there, and now it's everybody, because this is a public hunt. So it's everybody at the death tunnel all at once. There's like 50 or 75 people all in this death tunnel. And they're telling us the story of the death tunnel again. 60,000 people pass through here. There's body parts laying all over the sides and all this crazy stuff. And we're like, all right. He goes, all right, you got 10 minutes to take your pictures and look around, and then we got to be out of here. We're locking it up. Now, this is like a 250-foot tunnel that goes straight down through a mountain, and we're going to have 10 minutes to investigate. I just said, F this. I said, I'm done. I packed up all the gear. I said, you guys do whatever you want. I'll be waiting for you in the car. And as I started, packing the gear and carrying it out, the volunteers, well, if you walk out there, you can't come back in. And I'm like, trust me, you'll never see me in this place again. That is one of those places where they were just more worried about making a buck. This is my opinion only. And this is someone who's, like I said, I've done ghost hunting, paranormal hunting since the 80s. And I've been to a lot of places, public and private. This place had so much shady stuff going on that I feel sorry for anyone who actually spends any money and goes down there. Save your money. There are legitimate places. You go to Moundsville, you can go to Mansfield, you can go to Hillview Manor in Newcastle, you can go to Fort Mifflin, Eastern State Penitentiary, Pennhurst. There's more places than I can care to name. I mean, this place was just about making money. In my opinion, they had it set up to rig evidence and just take your money, and they got your money. It's all they wanted. They did more, in my opinion, to harm the paranormal research field than they did to help it or to prove any of their incredible claims that they had there. Just a very, very shady operation. My opinion only. But if I were y'all, I would think really, really hard before you drop a couple $100 to go spend a night ghost hunting down there. My opinion. Y'all have a good night. Peace out.